Join me as we go deep inside the Everglades, looking for the elusive Bigfoot. Hey, welcome to another video. Now, we're not going to go inside the Everglades, and we're not going to look for Bigfoot because I only look for things that are real. Unlike my subscriber friend Cindy here, who really believes that Bigfoot is real, I do not. I keep imploring her to go out with her little Nikon F5 and get me solid evidence, but she's yet to do that. And so until she does, instead of looking for Bigfoot, we are going to go look for Splash. Splash is about a 1-year-old heron who lives down the lake here a little ways. And we gave him the name Splash, or my grandson gave him the name Splash. And so we're going to use that. But that's not really what this video is about necessarily. What it's really about is if and why I think the Nikon Z8 made me a better photographer. And if it would make me a better photographer than, let's say, if I was using a Leica Q, a Leica M, a Canon R, a Sony A7, whatever. If you are a regular viewer of my channel, you know that I don't knock other brands. I'm not here to try to sell you on another brand. I do use Nikon for the most part, and it's not because Nikon gives me equipment or anything like that. They don't. I'm here to try to explain why I do use a Nikon Z8 and why, even if someone gave me a different camera brand, I'd still use a Nikon Z8. Have I considered going to another brand? Yeah, I really have. I've looked at Sony. Would I use, say, a Leica Q if I owned one and take photos of my grandkids or whatever? Oh, absolutely I would. So again, I'm not knocking those camera brands. So let's go look for Splash. He's down around the corner down there. Hopefully we'll be able to find him. Let's start with kind of the basics as to why I would choose a Z8 over, say, a Leica Q. The first one being versatility. Let's say I got a Leica Q343. I'm sure it's a wonderful camera. Again, I'm not here to knock it, but you're stuck with a 43 millimeter focal length. Now, this was an image that I took of my grandson at the time of me filming this. I took this image yesterday with the Z8 and the Voigtlander 50 millimeter f2 apo lens. And again, if you follow my channel, you know how much I love that Voigtlander lens. It's my favorite lens. Could I have gotten a better image with the Q343? You know, if I could, it would be so marginal that the versatility between the Z8 and the Q3 just wouldn't be worth it to me, right? And so that's the obvious advantage with a Z8 over, say, a Q3 is the versatility. Now, Canon can say, well, you know, we have a lot more lenses so far because now that Nikon switched to the Z, they don't have as many lenses, but you can go back and use the F-mount lenses, and Nikon is, of course, filling in their S line lenses rather quickly over the years, and they're pretty well filled out now. I'm sure there's a few. I don't think they have a tilt shift lens yet, and there's a few other things that they'll likely add in the future, but for the most part they've filled in their line. The other thing is price. Like a Q343 probably still costs more than a new Z8 with the Voigtlander lens. Of course, the Q3 obviously comes with a lens, so you'd have to add a lens to be fair, comparing apples to apples, right? These birds are squawking about something. And there's Splash. He's up in the tree. So price and versatility would be two reasons why I like the Z8 over, say, a Leica system, the Q, and even an M, because with M, I don't think they've got the long range lenses that Nikon has available to them. And with Canon, at least so far, they don't really allow you third-party lenses, and I love my Voigtlander lenses. So that's a big reason why I don't go with Canon. And Sony, from what I've never used Sony, so I can't say for sure, but from what I've heard from other people, the autofocus is better on the Sonys even now after Nikon has improved theirs. The Sonys is still better. And people can argue all they like about the color science. From what I've seen, for me personally, and I know other people will disagree, and that's fine. I'm not saying I'm right, they're wrong, or vice versa. I like the color science from the Nikon system more so than the Sony. And I think that the Nikon cameras are built a little bit better than the Sony. I don't know whether they've improved it or not, but back when the AR series first came out, one of the reasons why I stayed inside the Nikon ecosystem was that Sony was having problems with larger lenses breaking off the camera bodies. You know, they were just too heavy and they weren't built properly with the flanges or whatever it was, but that was one of the reasons why, that and the color science was why I stayed away from Sony. Even though I knew at that time they were well ahead of Nikon in the mirrorless world. They just were. And some would say they still are, and I'm not here to argue that. Again, I'm not here to push a particular brand. I'm only here to tell you why, for my money, the Nikon Z8 is the best all-around camera on the market. For the money, for the value. For me, it just is. Did it make me a better photographer? Does the Z8 make me a better photographer? I'm going to argue that it does. And it's not necessarily because of what the camera does or doesn't do, but the big reason why I say what I say is because of the fact, again, if you follow my channel, you know that I like shooting a variety of things. I like shooting these birds, I like shooting sports, landscapes, I like to use it as a travel camera. It'll do all those and more. And so because I can put a variety of lenses on the Z8, and again, is the autofocus perfect? No. It's a whole lot better than it was a couple years ago compared to, say, my Z7II. It's light years ahead of the Z7II, especially now that they've done a couple firmware upgrades. And in truth, I use the Voigtlander lenses in manual focus. I've been recently using the Thypoch Simera manual focus lens. So almost half the time I shoot with a manual focus lens anyway. So the autofocus, except for when I'm shooting birds or my grandkids' sports, those are about the only time I shoot autofocus anyway. Most of the time, if I'm shooting portraits or just walking around or even travel photography. Now I will say for travel I use the Nikon 24-120, which is an autofocus lens. Obviously I use that the most. That's the versatility of having a camera like a Z8. Now you can say, well, that's the same. That applies to a Z6 III or a Z5 or even a Sony, Canon, whatever. Or if you're doing that type of photography, you can take a Leica with one or two manual focus lenses on an M system and do the same thing. Well, that's true. But I can't come back home and shoot these birds with an M, at least not easily. Why has it made me a better photographer, and not necessarily because of the camera itself? Well, it makes me get out and use it more. It's just plain and simple. This camera body makes me want to use it. And that's how you get to be a better photographer. I went way back and I looked when I had the F5 film camera, and I had the D750 and even the D850, which I still believe is a wonderful camera. And if you're just getting into photography, go buy yourself a D850 and a couple of Nikon F-mount lenses, save yourself a ton of money, and you can get some amazing photos. If you're just learning photography, you can really do it on the cheap. Or even get an old D810 or something like that, even a D700. You can pick one of those up for $300 or $400 and get a couple lenses, and you'll be all set for under $1,000, and you can have a really good setup. But again, I digress. When I went back and I looked, I would take a camera out about 5-6 times a year. Since I've gotten the Z8, I take it out on average of about 100 to 150 times a year. And if you think all that extra practice doesn't help you become a better photographer, well, then you shouldn't be doing photography. One of the reasons why I know the Z8 made me a better photographer is because I took this image the other day, just a few days ago, and I looked at it and I thought, it's okay. You know, it's pretty commonplace. If I come out here 3-4 days a week, I can get one of those almost every time. 5-6 years ago, I'd have been so happy. I'd have been trying to send it off to National Geographic, thinking it's the best photo of a heron ever. And now it's just kind of commonplace for me to take those kind of photos. But it's not all because of the camera. I mean, I had to really take my time and learn about these herons, learn what their patterns were, learn to be patient, learn how to position myself between them and the sun, learn what area of the lake they could be on and what time of day because of where the sun would be positioned to be able to light up those wings and not have too many shadows across them. So there's a lot of things that I learned about photography that really had nothing to do with the Z8, but because the Z8 makes me come out and use it more, it improved other areas of my photography. And so again, I'm not trying to sell you on a particular camera brand. I'm really not. Whether you have Hasselblad, Pentax, Sony, Canon, like, it doesn't matter to me. Whatever you have, it just boils down to the more you use it, the more you're going to learn, the more you want to use it more, and possibly the more you're going to want to learn different genres of photography. Now, if you're trying to make money, that's a whole different thing. But for me, if you just go out and you enjoy your photography, and yeah, occasionally I sell one, and yeah, I belong to this gallery now, and I haven't sold anything out of it yet, but I do belong to the gallery. But it's forced me to want to get even better. So that's a big reason why. There's Splash. He came down out of his tree. The tree he was in was where his nest is, where he was born. He's never really left the area, which is good for me. There were 2 of them that came out of the nest. The other one kind of moved on quickly. But Splash has stayed in the area. So it'll be interesting to see if his mother and father come back, which they should be. If they're coming, it'll be soon. If they shove him out of this area or not. Hope not. But there he is. She. Could be a she. Either way, his name's Splash. So you can see Splash doesn't mind me getting too close. He's gotten kind of used to me the same way Henry did. I think he knows that I'm not really here to bother him. He goes about his business looking for snakes or fish, frogs, turtles, whatever he's looking for in there. One thing that I did notice that he does, that Henry does the same. He'll watch me, and then if I put the camera down to my waist, then he'll take off. But if I have it up to my face, he usually just looks at me like he does now. Again, that's one of the habits I had to learn over time. Henry was famous for that. As long as I keep a little distance and I don't act aggressive, he'll go about his business until he gets tired of me, and then he'll pop off. So that's why the Z8 has made me a better photographer. Is because in using your camera more, you want to learn more things. You want to really understand it. You want to really get into the menu system and see how you can push your creativity. You know, I've gone through different phases with how I process images now. And I wouldn't do that if I wasn't out taking more photos. I'm probably a little healthier now. Now, granted, having heart surgery and almost dying from blood clots will make you think about your health a little bit more. But I think I am. I eat better. I get more exercise. And that was really, in large part, due to just coming out with my camera every morning. Or not every morning, but a lot of mornings. My grandkids, different ones a few times. Even as the other day, I took this image here and he was leaning up against me and he asked me why I take so many pictures. And so I told him it was so when he's my age, he can show his grandson pictures that I took of him when he was their age. And maybe he can share some of those memories. And that's why, for me, the Z8 is my favorite camera, because it makes me want to use it. It allows me the versatility to photograph whatever I want to photograph, whenever I want to photograph. I just stick a different lens on it, and the quality of lenses that you can get is just amazing. And you get to interact with your family, with my grandkids. They ask me about it. They're getting in an age now where they're a little bit more interested in it, and they will ask me questions from time to time. And even once in a blue moon, one will actually smile for me. But the one image I showed you earlier, like this one, I wouldn't have taken that image 4 or 5 years ago. I may have gotten it. I don't know that I would have gotten it as sharp as I got it with a manual focus lens, and I certainly wouldn't have known how to process it the way I know how to process it now. I would have still likely done it in black and white because I started out shooting black and white film for years, and that was my interest. So I do tend to process a lot more in black and white. Anyway, I know I rambled on. I'll try and shorten this a little bit in editing. I appreciate you hanging in there. Thanks for watching, and take care, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye for now.